freaking first cut. Golly.
Welcome to the First Cut Podcast. I'm Rick Gehman, and this is your DFS preview for this week's Genesis Invitational. Joining me to break it all down, Sia Nejad is here. Sia, welcome. Happy Monday.
So for the 7th time this year, golf season starts this week. No more football. We've got the cream of the crop playing. It starts today. Not last week and not the other 5 times we said it.
This is the post-football starting point on the schedule. Yes, I'm aware of this one. That sport not taking any eyeballs away from our sport this time around. Greg DuCharme is here. Greg, good to see you, bud.
Good to see you guys too. I'm really looking forward to this one. I'm hoping we get another great nickname. Sia, that's on you. Because last week's was just phenomenal, and I love the way it played out. So I always find it amazing how many of the conversations from a Monday pan out early in the week. My only regret is we don't get enough chance to talk about it because we're always on to the next one. But that was the KH Lee stuff last week was just phenomenal.
TPC Lee, I believe, is the nickname that Sia gave us. And of course he cashes. What was the first round leader? 80, 60, 70, 80 to 1, something in that range?
It was 80 to 1. And it allowed me to offer a third nickname or a second nickname. And it's FR Lee, as in first round leader Lee. So that worked out really well for a few people. So
I love that. That's so good.
Awesome.
Big boy tournament. It's an invitational. It's a smaller field. It's Riviera Country Club. Greg, this is one of my favorite spots on the schedule. The course itself is phenomenal. It's getting this, elevated status the last couple of years. So we've got every single golfer inside the top 10 in the world rankings teeing it up. I mean, it's just chef's kiss for me.
It really is phenomenal. I mean, looking through this board as I continue to look through now, I can't get over what the options are in the 6K range. The 7K range. I mean, these are some heavy hitters. And normally scrolling through RickRunGood.com, you get into the 7Ks and the 6Ks and you start scrapping and clawing for reasons to play somebody. But this week, it's like, it's almost like a grab bag. Like, what do you want? Do you want a guy with recent history? Because he's there. Recent form, course history. He's there. Great talent. Yeah, he's there. So there's a lot of great options this week, and it makes it challenging, but it also gives you a lot of opportunity to differentiate yourself, and I can't wait to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I'll actually share my screen. This is my website, RickRunGood.com. We're looking at the course key stats model right now, and Sia, it's going to be a challenge, right? 30 under par is not going to get it done, or at least 30 under par would certainly get it done, but there's no chance anybody's getting to 30 under par. These are the second most difficult fairways to hit. They're the third most difficult greens to hit. It is generally a course that rewards the ball strikers, but listen, there's going to be some tricky, savvy shots you're going to have to hit around the greens. What types of golfers are you looking for around Riviera this week?
So I'm definitely, and this is kind of a catch-all phrase. It's almost a cop-out answer to your question, but I'm definitely looking for the all-around game. So, I understand these fairways are hard to hit. They're narrow, but that doesn't mean I'm necessarily just looking for, accurate ball strikers off the tee, for example. I think the around the green game and the approach play are probably the two most significant for me that I'm going to be focused on. This is definitely a course, especially if the weather picks up, but even if it doesn't, where you're really going to need to navigate yourself around the course and be clever and be smart and hopefully have some course experience. So I'm looking for those types of guys. And frankly, there's a lot of guys that I'm playing, or at least a few guys I'm playing in this tournament that I wouldn't normally play, let's say in a birdie fest, for example. I want guys who can manufacture plays that aren't necessarily in front of everybody. In other words, plays that other people wouldn't necessarily be thinking of.
Here are the winners, Greg, with their associated odds from the last handful of years. Max Homa won this last year 50 to 1. Adam Scott in 2020, he was 30 to 1. We had a long shot the year before that. That was JB Holmes at 100 to 1. And then Bubba Watson, He's won it 3 times. He's won it at 50-1, 20-1, and 25-1. Dustin Johnson was the shortest, 7.5-1, and James Hahn threw in another long shot victory for those guys, 200-1. Does that tell us anything? Does that help us kind of make decisions that we've had 2 long shot winners here, but generally it's like 50-1 and shorter?
I think it tells you about the strength of the field. That's the number one takeaway for me. When you listen to those odds and you combine it with those names, and there seems to be a disconnect, right? They're big time players, and those odds seem, maybe aside from Dustin Johnson, they seem a little longer than you would expect. Bubba Watson, with his course history, though, that's going to play into his odds. Although I guess the first time he won, it wouldn't. But beyond that, he's a past champion. It's going to play a factor. So I think it speaks to the strength of field. And it also, looking at that in comparison to this model that we have here, I find it very interesting. I'll tell you why. I see there the smallest number is strokes gain around the green. And this is a big conversation that we had last year, where in this California swing, we see a big reward for short game. Yeah. You have these California events where short game is very important. Greens are hard to hit. Fairways are hard to hit. The rough can be penal at times. Weather can be a factor. You got to grind it out. I mean, Farmers is a great short game course. This is a great short game kind of course. Pebble can be a great short game course where the greens are hard to hit. And when we go to Florida, it changes dramatically, and it favors ball strikers tremendously. So I find that very interesting. Yet, when you look at who's won here, those names stand out as ball strikers. Max Homa is almost like a Kyle Stanley kind of model, where he's a great ball striker, struggles on and around the greens.
How dare you?
I had to.
I love it.
We
got to fit his name in at least once every single show. We have to. It's contractual.
It's a law. It's the Monday law. So I got him in there already. But that's the kind of player Max Homa is. A great ball striker, struggles on the greens. Now, when he wins, he putts well. So that's the difference between he and Kyle Stanley. That's why he wins. That's why Max Homa wins, and why he's an interesting player to talk about. Adam Scott, great ball striker. Bubba Watson, not really known for short game and putting. He's a great driver of the golf ball, and at times he's been a great iron player. Not for long stretches, but he has great tournaments. And then, I guess that's basically Dustin Johnson was the other one I was thinking of. Great ball striker, great all around player, but really known for his ball striking. So you have this difference where the winners seem to be great ball strikers, yet the model says, okay, short game, distance is important, putting is important, more important than normal courses. And I think that really speaks to Sia's point of all-around players. Looking for guys who can put together an all-around performance, to me, is very important. But I think it leads to, in your fantasy model, a very diverse mix where you're not just looking for one style of player. You're going to have a Kevin Na may be an option because he's had a good record here through short game. And that short game can pay off here, where at the same time, a player like Justin Thomas is a great option as well because of ball striking. So it should be really interesting. It presents a lot of options.
Yeah, diverse is a good way to put it, and get used to seeing Riviera, because it's not only going to host the 2026 U.S. Women's Open, but the 2028 Olympics. Yeah, when the Olympics come to L.A. Sia, have you been watching the Olympics this time around?
I feel like I should say yes, but the answer is no. I have not been.
So you haven't seen the monobob?
I actually saw some sort of clip about it. I mean, isn't that the bobsled? What are we doing here?
It's a single person bobsled.
We weren't already doing that?
I guess not, Sia.
Okay. Yeah, I guess.
See, I always thought the monobob was like the luge, but I guess that's different. You're actually inside the vehicle.
The monobob is like a women's only event.
Oh,
there you go. But it is different. Yeah, because the luge, you lay down on a sled. No, that's probably not the right word. On a thing.
Luge
small
board.
Thing. Very small board, low board. But a bobsled, is kind of like a bigger car, and a monobob is like a single person one of those. I didn't know
Rick,
it was women's only. It's fascinating stuff.
Rick, I know you're not trying to be disrespectful, but I mean, and it's impressive, but they're going sledding, okay? The luge people are going sledding.
Very, very fast sledding on their backs. What's the
Scary
forward-facing
sledding.
one? Skeleton when you go head
That's
first?
skeleton.
Ooh, boy.
Aptly named. It's purely terrifying.
Yes.
You got to be
Which
sick
is
in the
why,
head to
I mean,
pull that off.
those events are really interesting because I don't know the intricacies and what separates the greats from the, sledders, but it's fascinating to see, and it's terrifying. They go so fast, and it's purely on ice. So, I mean, all the respect in the world for that.
Crazy stuff. We're going to jump into the $10,000 section of this board. But first, we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners.
Back on Paramount Mountain, where entertainment lives.
Look, amigos. Cave paintings of all who live here. This painting really speaks to me.
Peekaboo! Are ya ready, kids? I always do this.
And we're back. The $10,000 range on DraftKings is 5 golfers deep. John Rahm, 11,300. Patrick Cantlay at 11,000. Justin Thomas is 10,700. Colin Morikawa, 10,400. And Dustin Johnson is 10,100. See ya. This is an absolutely stacked field. I was trying to figure out a way to differentiate these golfers between one another, and I'm having a very difficult time. So I'm hoping that you can point me in the right direction.
Yeah, this is tough, obviously. There's a few guys I have in mind, and unfortunately, the two of the few are at the top. It's John Rahm and Patrick Cantlay. It's just so hard for me to get away from those two guys when I've seen their recent history. I've seen their course history here at Riviera. And frankly, even when they're playing poorly, like over the last few tournaments where there have been spots where they've been playing poorly, they still end up finishing great. And I love that in a golfer. Like, I don't know that I can say the same, for example, about Justin Thomas or Dustin Johnson, notwithstanding his history here. So it's really those two guys at the top. I think Colin is an interesting unknown, but the problem with Colin is I still think he's going to garner some ownership. And so usually those unknown guys you can get at a really low ownership percentage. I'm not sure you're getting that with Colin.
Yeah, I hate to keep going back to this, but it remains to be true. The last 50 rounds, which again is about 6 months worth of rounds for most of these guys, about half a year, John Rahm is gaining 2.5 strokes per round. Patrick Cantlay is gaining nearly 2.2. They're the only golfers gaining over 1.7 strokes per round. I mean, they are just in a different class. I know it's annoying. I know I say it every week, Greg, but it is statistically true. So they're the two best players for a sustained period of time, but we've got some big boppers right behind. Is it worth trying to pivot to a Justin Thomas who has 2 top 10s here, but in his last 2 trips, he's missed the cut, or Colin Morikawa that CEO was mentioning, or Dustin Johnson, who's been phenomenal here? Like, there is still a plethora of riches outside of Rahm and Cantlay.
Yes. I think Dustin Johnson's a viable option. And the reason is, look, I mean, JT and Morikawa, it's hard to say you're going to go wrong with them, but they assume more risk in this group. And for that reason, it's really hard to stay away from. To me, it's 3 guys. It's Rahm, it's Cantlay, and DJ would be your alternative option. And the reason is simple. They check every box. They are long off the tee. They're accurate off the tee. They have great short games. They're putting great. They're playing great. They have great records here, especially with Rahm and Cantlay. And that's why those strokes gain numbers look the way they do. Every single box is checked. There is no weakness. If they don't hit it well, this is what Patrick Cantlay did. He hit it terribly the first 3 days, led the field in putting. And then on Sunday, he leads the field approaching the green. And that's it. They are talented enough to oppose the model. So at any point in this tournament, they're going to be a factor unless they miss the cut, which is I mean, it's almost taboo to even bring up, but they just look like such locks. I feel like you need to get that that blue chip player in your lineup. And when there's 3 of them, and maybe the general public will see Justin Thomas as one of those too. And if they see Justin Thomas as one of those, now you really have 5 blue chip players sitting in the 10K plus range. And I have to think that's going to spread out ownership a little bit. I don't think you're going to have one player dominate. That would be my guess. And there are so many reasons to like all 5 of these guys that I think for me, I'm going to go with the safer 3 options. If I want to pay down, I'll go DJ. But I think Rahm and Cantlay are really setting up to be must, because there's no stone left unturned with their game right now. It's completely rock solid.
We are approaching the 1-year anniversary. This week is the 1-year anniversary of the last time Justin Thomas lost strokes on approach in a stroke play event. The only time he actually did it was at the match play, but that's wonky stuff because they don't play every single hole and all that good stuff. But this event last year was the last time he lost strokes on approach. That's how good he's been. See, I agree. There are 5 blue chippers at the top here, but we cannot play them all. Let's remove Rahm. Let's remove Cantlay from this conversation. Is Morikawa your third guy? Is that kind of the way you rank these, Sia?
Well, no, it's actually DJ was my third guy.
Okay.
But if we're talking about Colin versus JT, I think I would prefer to go with Colin over JT.
Why?
Well, coming off 2 missed cuts for JT doesn't give me. I mean, I understand his history prior to I guess 2020 was good here, but I feel like for Colin Morikawa, there's such upside there, and I think it might be equal to Justin Thomas's, if not better, considering his ball striking. And again, he's a guy we haven't seen too much, so maybe ownership is down a little bit. The reality, Rick, is I'm probably not getting to either of those guys. So really, what I'm debating is it's a debate for somebody else, because for me, it's going to likely be Cantlay or Rahm that's going to be a fixture in my lineup, and I might pepper in DJ, but I'm not super enamored with that, notwithstanding his history. So to me, JT and Colin are kind of 4th and 5th on this list.
It's crazy.
Hey, Rick, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
You think JT's cleaned up his driving a little bit this year? Because the separator to me and the JT Morikawa thing would be Morikawa is way more accurate off the tee, but JT probably has a better short game. But I'm looking at JT's off the tee numbers, and he's really been gaining quite consistently. You think that's coming more from distance than accuracy? Or has he gotten rid of some of those errant shots?
No, I think it's both. I think it is coming more from distance than accuracy, but I do think he's reined it in a little bit. We still see him hit that occasional, like, oh boy, that's going like way right. I've lost this one. Just get lucky type of deals.
Yeah.
But
feels like a little less to me.
It feels like a little bit less. And the thing that we never talk about with JT, and you can kind of see it here, I just have the last 24 rounds up. Of the 10K guys, he's like, statistically, by far the best around the green player. Rahm's had a little bit of bad luck recently, hasn't played as well. Longer term, it's probably Rahm, but we don't give JT enough credit, Greg, for his around the green play. His hands are so good. He can hit any shot, and we don't often talk about that because of what an elite kind of iron player or wedge player that he is.
Right, and he hits so many greens of regulation. We never talk about greens of regulation, but this year on tour, he's hitting over 75% of his greens. So how often are we displaying that short game? It's not like Patrick Reed and maybe Jordan Spieth. Even though Spieth's a great iron player, you see a lot more. He doesn't hit that number of greens. No. So you see this short game put on display a lot more often with some guys. And JT isn't one of those. It's like Hideki Matsuyama's short game. It's great. It's phenomenal. You just never see it. So I think that takes away, but I agree with you. His hands, his wedge play in general, even distance wedges, partial wedges, 80-yard shots are among the best in the game. So the 2 bugaboos with him have been the errancy off the tee, which I do feel like, no stats to back this up, but I feel like those have been reined in to a degree, and the putting, which I don't feel like has been I don't feel like that's been reined in. So I guess that's the biggest concern, and that concern exists with Morikawa too.
And for the record, I mean, since we did talk about all around game, I mean, the around the green game is better for Justin Thomas. So that is a nice differentiator. And I think the putter's been a little bit better too, but that's not really saying much.
Sia, okay. So it's very early on a Monday. How do you envision this ownership shaking out? If you want it to be different, are the guys to be different on the acronyms or the initials, JT and DJ? Are those the guys to be different on, assuming everybody goes, okay, well, Rahm and Cantlay have been basically in every optimal lineup. One or the other has been in like every optimal lineup for 2 months. And then you get Colin Morikawa, who's at a really good price. And I think people understand the ball striking stuff. Are JT and DJ the pivots here?
I don't think so. First of all, I think it's going to be, and I think Greg alluded to this earlier, I think it's going to be pretty flat across the board, but I think it's going to be JT and Colin actually that are going to be the quote pivots, because I don't think there's any way that people aren't going to spend up for Jon Rahm and Patrick Cantlay. And DJ, because of his history here, I think people are just going to be enamored with that, and they're going to feel pretty strong about grabbing DJ for the first time in quite some time. I think it's Colin and JT that get left at least a little bit lower than those three.
If Colin Morikawa is left behind, I'll be very happy about that. So we'll see how that shakes out as the week goes on. Before I move on to the 9K range, there's a question in the chat that I want to... Okay, Tom asks, is fading the 10K tier even remotely sane? And Greg, I think you might have to be insane to fade the entire 10K range, right?
I do. Well, look, this comes from the strength in the 9K range, which we're going to get to. And I could see a leaderboard full of 9K guys easily, which is why that's remotely sane. But the guys up there are so good; they're locks in your lineup. And the 6K range and the lower end of this player pool is really why you got to get somebody in the 10K plus range in your lineup, and you don't worry about price because you have so many options down below that are viable options that have win equity down there. And that's not always the case. So I understand where you come from with that question because the 9K is so strong, but I think you have enough on the back end here where it's really hard to leave those guys out.
So Rick, I love that question because in response to your original question about who was going to be lower, who would be the contrarian play, I was literally going to suggest, well, the contrarian play would be the pivot would be to go right to the 9K range because of the names in there. So listen, it's not a plan that I would expect, big time consistent dividends. But in this tournament, listen, we're going to get to it. There's some big time names here that if they were 10,100 instead of, let's say, spoiler alert, 9,700, that might be a guy I like. I think everybody would be like, okay, yeah, that's totally fair. There's 6 guys in the 10K range, not 5.
Spoiler alert, the guy that's $9,700 that Sia is alluding to is Rory McIlroy. He is in that $9,000 range along with Xander Schauffele, Victor Hovland, Hideki Matsuyama, Scotty Scheffler, Cam Smith, and Brooks Koepka. Greg, star power, my friend.
Yeah, it's like
star
another
power.
10K lineup.
It's like another 10K range. So maybe the pivot is none of the 10K guys and start here, but let's start figuring out what we do, because I think Rory is fascinating. I'm sure Sia's going to talk plenty about that. Victor is coming off a missed cut. Scotty Scheffler's coming off a victory. How do we allocate our assets here in the 9K range?
All right. Well, let's take our model, which is all around players, and start right on the top, because Xander Schauffele is sitting there. And he may be the third best example of great all-around players. Rahm, Cantlay, Schauffele. That would probably be my rank. And DJ would be somewhere in the top 5 as well. But I think Xander is probably your third best option of that. So when you look at Xander Schauffele, you look at missing out on a playoff last week by 1 shot, come into Riviera where he's finished in 5 starts. He has 2 tied 15th. He's got a tied 23rd and a tied 9th. So he's played great at this venue, or well at this venue. And it wouldn't be surprising at all if he was holding the trophy at the end of the week. He has the game to do it. If you look at short game, if you value short game, he's phenomenal around the greens. He was a top 10 putter on the PGA Tour last year. And although he lost strokes this week at Waste Management, that may be a good sign, because he lost strokes for the first time since the BMW Championship and came in tied 3rd. So he's hitting the ball really well. His distance seems to be up yet again. He was crushing the ball this weekend. this week at the WM, and all of a sudden, this guy checks every box too. So I love starting right away with Xander. The hard thing about Xander is that Rory McIlroy is right behind him, and Rory's accumulated. And I know C is going to have a lot of comments on this too, but you're looking at a 3rd, a 12th, an 18th, a 6th, a win at the CJ Cup. Those are his last starts, and Rory feels like he's on the verge of winning. And I think we're seeing Rory of old, and that brings into consideration his course history here, which aside from last year missing the cut is really, really good.
The 4 results that Greg is mentioning are European Tour, DP World Tour results. Strong fields, no doubt, but not necessarily official, or the Hero World Challenge is in there as well, but not official PGA Tour events. And Sia, they're great results. But the last 4 times we saw advanced metrics on Rory, he's lost strokes on approach in all 4. Now we go back to Riv. I think there are maybe some question marks. I lean on the side of like, fire up Rory. Let's go. Give me all the Rory. But I want to hear what kind of you have to say about this.
Yeah, I'm not really concerned about the approach numbers back in. I mean, we're talking about October and September and August. So this is quite some time ago. And I'm sure if we had strokes gain data for, when he was in Abu Dhabi and overseas in Dubai, it would probably be pretty impressive, is my guess, given his finishing positions. I also like how he played out there. I think it was in Abu Dhabi where he had a second round where he shot something pretty terrible and then bounced back in round 3 and round 4 and shot 2 really good scores to finish in good finishing position. So I think he's coming in with really good form. From a finishing position standpoint, we know that for a fact, but from a strokes gain data standpoint, I'm going to make that assumption. So the approach number, listen, he's also very comfortable here. He's actually expressed that himself, but he's also I feel like his game is really perfect for here. And I think his finishing positions are reflecting that, especially a 4th and a 5th. Yeah, there's a miscut there, but yeah, there's nothing I don't like about Rory. His around the green game, he's great. His approach game, well, listen, we don't, we see what we saw 6 months ago, 5 months ago, but I think that's really going to rebound off the tee. We know he's great. I think he's got all the components, including the putter. So I'm ready to coin a new nickname. Greg, are you ready?
Yes, I've been waiting.
We go from TPC Lee to Roar Vieira.
Roar Vieira. I thought you were going to go with Riviera Rory or
Roar Vieira. Oh no, it's actually better than I thought it was going to be. Roar Vieira.
Yeah, it's a mouthful, but it's worth it.
I don't think you can give him that nickname. He's never won here.
I'm in the business of projecting. He's going to win this week.
You're projecting.
He's prognosticating,
just like TPC Lee, first round leader.
So you're basically telling us what the headline's going to be if newspapers still existed, which I assume they do not. But like if we got the Monday morning paper, it would say the headline on the sports section would say Roar Vieira.
Yeah, in all caps with a dash in between the R.
Just digital now. Yeah, it's on my iPad.
Roar Vieira.
It's a lot of R's, but I like it.
It's tough.
Boy. All right. Well, listen, there's Scotty Scheffler, Brooks Koepka. Hideki Matsuyama has been basically the best player on tour for 8 starts, and a hard setup, Greg, kind of like Memorial, kind of like some of the places he's had success. He's got 2 top 10s in his last 3 trips. Maybe I just go with Hideki and that wins me all the money.
Yeah, maybe it's Cam Smith.
Maybe it's Cam Smith.
I mean, Cam Smith, you're looking at look, I don't want to disrespect Hideki here. The guy's got 3 top 10s and a tied 11th. And he's missed the cut here twice. But last year, he missed the cut last year. He wasn't playing great at the time. I know he won the Masters, but leading up to the Masters, it was like some not great play. And that's really turned around and it's really changed. And in the years before that, you have a T5, a T9, another missed cut in 17, T11, T4, T23. So, I mean, this sets up perfect for him. And he could be a really safe anchor play if you are doing one of the pivot moves in the 10K zone. He could be a safe pivot because I don't foresee a weak performance out of him. Now, Cam Smith, on the other hand, would be a more risky play to me. He has 2 top 10s here, 1 missed cut, And the thing that about Cam Smith is he hasn't been nearly as good off the tee as Hideki. But he can lean on the short game and the putting, and it seems to be a really nice venue for him as well. So he might be a sneaky play. And he played really well in Saudi Arabia, which is just simply a sign of good form. He won the Century Tournament of Champions, and I give him all the credit in the world for missing the cut at the Sony Open. We see that so much. You win, there's a setback, especially when it's the next week. And now it seems like he's right back into form. So I almost look at Cam Smith and I rule out the miscut at the Sony. And what I see after that is really good stuff. So again, this is another one of those ranges where it's hard to go wrong.
Who's the guy, Sia, you'd least like to play in the $9,000 range?
It would likely be
Scotty?
It's between Scotty Scheffler and, which is funny to say, and
so
Brooks
stupid.
Koepka.
It's so stupid. But
It's really stupid. But
God.
to be honest, it's not because he won last week. It's just because evaluating these players, I agree with Greg, by the way. Cam Smith is probably my second favorite guy, if not tied with Rory. There's just a lot to like. I like Hideki a lot too. So there's a lot to like in that 9K range. Somebody's got to be left out.
To me, Scotty, the reason you, or as Kyle says, Scott, the reason you don't play Scott is because he didn't win, or because he won last week. Because this guy does great on hard golf courses. This is like exactly the kind of venue you would expect Scotty Scheffler to step up and perform in. And he's done well enough here. We're tied 20th, tied 30th, and a missed cut. So, I mean, all the signs to me would say Scott Scheffler is a pretty good option. I'll stop that. I'll call him Scotty. He just won for crying.
Do you think he'll ever drop the Scotty? Like, how old is he? He's like 20.
No.
Has he missed? He's missed the window. Now he's still Scotty.
Yeah, he's Scott. It's like Ricky Fowler, right? It's never going to be Rick. It's just Ricky.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
So did you just guess his age? How old do you think he is? Because I didn't know. I just looked it up.
Oh, I think I would have guessed he's 24. Nah, 25 maybe.
Greg?
I think he is 25.
He is 25. Good job.
Yeah, because he went to four years at Texas, right? So
and then a year on the Corn Ferry Tour.
Yeah, and then a couple years. Yes, yeah.
And for the record, to Greg's point, I mean, he does rate out really well across like all the metrics in terms of the all-around game, around the green, putter, approach. It's all off the tee. It's all pretty great for Scotty Scheffler. But then again, I'm only looking at 24 rounds, so obviously some of that's baked in from last week as well, of course.
Yeah, he was plenty good before that. Okay, let's go down to the $8,000 range because as you can imagine, there are still big names in that range as well. But first, we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners. And we're back. The $8,000 range. Oh my gosh. Jordan Spieth, Will Zalatoris, Sam Burns, Sung J M, Bubba Watson, 3-time winner. Tony Finau, Max Homa went to a playoff together last year, right next to each other in the pricing. Adam Scott, our winner from 2 years ago. Matt Fitzpatrick, Taylor Gooch. Oh boy, Sia. There's a lot here too. I guess that's what happens when you have an invitational and a very deep field like we have. It's just like riches on riches on riches.
Yeah. And it's funny because, when we started the show, I said, there's some guys I don't normally play that I will play here because I just think they're technicians and they have an ability to navigate a difficult course in a different way than other people. And Jordan Spieth is really, him and Cam Smith are at the top of that list, in my opinion, in terms of just being able to figure it out and navigate a tough course, whether they're in the rough or not off the tee. So I understand Jordan typically has some issues in terms of, off the tee, but his history here is pretty good. His price is great at 8,900. Recent history, obviously, Waste Management wasn't great, but he has that second place at Pebble. I think at 8,900, he's just a really good value. So for the 8K range, it's him, it's Max Homa, who I was on last week as well, who really rates out well here and also has good course history here. And then my other 8K guy, Rick, is one of your guys who you said was the most mispriced golfer last week. And of course you were right. It's Taylor Gooch. I think all three of these guys have really good returns in terms of value.
Yeah, if Taylor Gooch didn't just eject himself on Sunday, that would have looked really, really good. He was like two shots back heading into the final round. He was like 3 or 4 over. Ugly stuff, but for the most part, a lot of good golf played by Taylor Gooch last week. When I look at this 8K range, Greg, I see Sam Burns, who, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't he hold the lead here last year at the turn on Sunday? Right?
Yes.
I'm remembering that correctly?
Yes. Major
Sung
factor.
Jae Im, who has taken a long vacation. He's taken 2 consecutive weeks off. That's unbelievable. Might as well be 2 years for Sung Jae, but when he's at his best, he's a great ball striker. And we've got the Bubba track of all Bubba tracks for Bubba Watson, who's $8,500. So how else do we start, using our clicks here in the $8,000 range?
So one, I think Will Zalatoris is going to be maybe a little bit, I don't know. See, what do you think his ownership's going to be like? Will he be a forgotten guy?
No, he'll be pretty popular. But again, I think it's going to be, there's such rich talent, through the 8K range. It really does stop at the 8K range. I don't think it's going to be some exorbitant number on him, but I think he's going to carry some popularity for sure.
So he had tied 15th finish here last year. I really like the way his game sets up for Riviera. So he is an option, although not my favorite. Sam Burns, I think, is a fantastic option. It was the 3rd place finish for him last year. Now, the form has been a little quiet so far. We missed the last 2 cuts, which doesn't look great. Maybe that keeps people away, and probably as rich as the talent is, it probably keeps me away as well. But I love Bubba Watson. I love Taylor Gooch, and I am also interested in Adam Scott. It's hard to, Max Homa out just by rule, and I'm looking for reasons to rule people out here, but because he's the defending champ, he's out. So Adam Scott, I think, is starting to get back into form, and he's going to get back to one of his favorite golf courses in the world. His putting has really improved. So I love what I'm seeing out of Adam Scott, and he definitely makes my list. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I was going to declare the most mispriced golfer this week as Matt Fitzpatrick, who is, what is he, $8,100 or $8,000 flat? $8,100. T10 in Phoenix, T6 at Pebble.
Yeah.
Remember when everyone was like, oh no, we haven't seen him play in so long. Yeah, doesn't matter. Just off to a really great start, piles up top 10s. I mean, the guy's a stud. I love that.
And a T5 and a T30 here in his 2 starts.
Yeah, let's go. Fire him up. Why don't people, he's way better off the tee than I think people would ever imagine. He's a constant gainer off the tee.
And he's not long. So that points to some great accuracy, which will go a long way this week. So he's an option. I question, can he win this tournament, Rick?
No. Well, I mean, maybe, sure. Yeah. I mean, he won DP World Tour a couple years ago. He doesn't have to at 8,100, right? If he finishes T3, I'm smitten.
Yeah. That seems like I don't know. I look at the guys. I look at Taylor Gooch, who I think is, I mean, he was upset a couple times last week. In a good week, he was really upset. And Sunday, you're a round away from a great tournament, really contending to win again. And you just won, 5-6 starts ago? So I love what I'm seeing out of Taylor Gooch, and I love his recent form here, his course history, T12, T10, T20. And I think that makes it hard to go with a Matty Fitzpatrick, as you said. And then you got Adam Scott. Adam Scott probably doesn't have the upside of Fitzpatrick.
I don't know. Adam Scott won this event 2 years ago.
Yeah.
He hasn't won since, right? He hasn't won anywhere in the world, right? No, I don't think so.
No, and I just love Adam Scott at this venue. I think it's perfect for him, and I know he loves it. And I love the fact that he played last week.
So do I. I was just gonna say the same thing. He got the warm up in. He comes back from the Middle East. He gets the 4 rounds in at Phoenix that were fine, and then he gets to go to like one of the spots for him.
His favorite, I would bet this is in his top 3 favorite golf courses in the U.S. I got to figure Augusta National's in there.
Yeah,
and I would bet you he would say Riviera next. That would just be my guess. So I think it's a perfect fit for him. And it makes it hard for me to go to Matt Fitzpatrick when I'm so into Taylor Gooch and Adam Scott and Bubba Watson, and then Sam Burns and Will Zalatoris really pique my interest as well. I just have a hard time going there. It's probably a very reasonable play. Excuse me, but it's just a tough range for Fitzpatrick.
It is a tough range. I mean, even it's funny. The guy who finished runner-up last year, finished runner-up a couple of years ago, Tony Finau, one of the better setups for him, Sia, but just like the form that we've seen since his victory has just not been good enough, right? I mean, there's really no love for Tony Finau despite the history and the on-paper setup.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like good value, and I think both Tony and Matt Fitzpatrick are probably going to carry some ownership because they both seem like they're popping with value, maybe more so than some of the guys in the 8K range. But it's not for me. I mean, between Tony Finau and Matt Fitzpatrick, I'd much prefer Fitzpatrick, especially with the price break. I
think I would too.
Yeah, I generally don't get there with Tony. For whatever reason, I think he's just so darn likable that people just want to play him. They want to vault him to a stratosphere that perhaps he doesn't belong in from a talent and consistency standpoint. And so here we are having people play him tournament to tournament, especially when he's priced like this, but it's not for me.
Hunky Tony, $8,400, not getting much love from the industry this week. $7,000 range, lots of names, lots of them. Leishman, Henley, Neiman, they're near the top. The middle looks like Seamus Power, Tom Hoagie, which hat tip Tom Hoagie. This guy's an absolute stud. And then the bottom of the $7,000 range is Francesco Molinari, Carlos Ortiz, Johnny Vegas. What do you see here, Greg?
I'm very interested in Jason Kokrak. I'm mildly interested in Paul Casey. And then I would also throw Alex Noren in there. He was so impressive last week, and it's a venue where he has a tied 12th and a tied 16th and a tied 59th as well. So he probably doesn't check as many boxes as you typically would see, but coming off of a warm-up kind of tied 39th at Farmers Insurance Open, a tied 6th last week, heading to a place he likes. I like what I've seen out of Alex Noren in his last 2 starts. It's been very good across the board. And when he's hitting it well, he's tough to beat because he does have a great short game and a great putter. So he's hitting it well. That puts him into an all-around category that I really like. And then to go back to Jason Kokrak, he's in a similar position here where there's an all-around game that's pretty good. The recent form has been, as you can see right there, if you're watching on YouTube, right? Tied 45th, tied 17th, 38th, and a win. But if you look at what he's done here at Genesis, he's had some nice finishes. He was tied 2nd in 2016. I know that's a long time ago, but he's made a lot of cuts. He's missed the cut here twice.
He's played here a lot too.
He's played here a lot, and he's comfortable. And I could see it being a really nice venue for him. So he's of interest too. And there's guys then that you end up leaving out, like Cameron Tringale is another guy that I'm very interested in the low. He's at 7,300, so he's a little bit lower down the board. But you're looking at a guy with a lot of top 30 finishes in this event, almost every year. And this year seems to be his best year on the PGA Tour. He was tied 3rd just 2 weeks ago at another really tough venue. And he missed the cut at Pebble, but I give him a little credit for that. So if the trend continues, this will be a good week for him. I mean, listen to this order. We talked about this last week with Henley, right? Tied 2nd, missed cut. Tied 7th, missed cut. Tied 3rd, missed cut. What are we going to get this week?
T4.
T4, you think?
Yeah.
Maybe the first win. I like Tringale, and it's not because of that pattern. I think it fits really well for him.
They should let you bet exact results, like exact scores of football games, Sia. Like I want Cameron Tringale T4 exactly or 4th exactly. And I get paid out on T4 as well, obviously, in this fantasy. But like that would be real degenerate stuff if they let you do that.
Oh, I got something for you, Rick. So okay. I did, we had a watch party for the early edge last night for the Super Bowl. So I was on for the entire second half. And at the end of the watch party, which, again, Jonathan Coachman ran that, of course, from the first cut, as everybody knows, there's a guy named Prop Stars that's on that show.
Is that on his birth certificate? Prop Stars?
Well, I think so. He goes by, his nickname is Alex, but I think the birth certificate is Prop Stars. So the point is he actually put at 10,000 to 1, he put some money on the exact score. Real degenerate stuff. The exact score he had was Rams 23, Bengals 20.
That was the final score, Sia.
It sure was, and he got paid on it. That ticket's circulating all over Instagram and Twitter, but it was pretty amazing. He had to go off of camera because he was sweating it so hard during the last minute, because obviously the Bengals could have tied that game. And then he gets back on camera and tells everybody, and we're just all completely blown away. So sorry, that was an aside.
That's what I need in my life. I need a little bit of that sweat in my life. I like that.
Pop stars, aka Alex.
Love that.
Right.
Prop stars, aka Alex, with the exact score bet. Sia, what do you see out of the rest of this $7,000 range? Because I could get behind Thomas Peters, who's been great worldwide. Tom Hoagie's apparently the best player on tour at this point. Like, what else are we dealing with here in the $7,000 range?
Tom Hoagie's really interesting. I think I'm at a point right now, because I'm a fan, where is he really going to keep it up this long in this field? I'm not so sure. There's certainly value there, but I don't think I'm going to be on him this week. There's a couple of guys that Greg mentioned that I also like. Alex Noren is one of them. So I won't go into that again. I will point out it's good course history here. Cameron Tringale is the other one. And I love the fact that I know, Rick, you don't, but I love the fact that he just missed a cut at Pebble, because people didn't really want to play him at Pebble anyway, but people played him because he's Cameron Tringale. He's a pretty good name. So I think people are generally going to be off of him. And I think he's a great course fit here. His short game is really good. The putter around the green, he's not bad on approach. So I think he checks a lot of boxes, and I don't think he has much win equity. I don't think he has a ton of upside, but if you're looking for a guy who could finish top 20, maybe top 15, and has a good chance of making a cut. Oh, and by the way, this is only a 120 person field, maybe 119 at this point. So, over 50% of this field is making the cut. You're probably going to want a 6 for 6 this week because of that sort of condensed field here. So I think Cameron Tringale's right in there. The other two guys I want to mention, Lonto Griffin's one of them, because he's just been playing so well. I kind of fear the around the green game for him. So maybe we can get into that, because that's something I'm definitely going to be emphasizing. The other guy I kind of like, who I think let some people down last week in spite of a made cut, is Luke List. Again, he's going to rate out really well in anybody's model. The ball striking is there. The all-around game is really developed with Luke List. And his history here, it's a miscut last time out, but 30th, 15th, 26th before that, that was when Luke List wasn't very good. And now he's much better. I really like the idea of playing him after, him letting some people down last week.
Lonto to start 2022, and Sia is right. Like, historically, the around the green play is not great. To end his 2021, he lost strokes around the green in 6 of 7. To start the new year, he's gained in 3 of 3. In fact, he's basically gaining across the board in each of his first 3 starts. He only lost a small bit off the tee at Torrey Pines. Otherwise, he would be a clear gainer across the board in 3 straight events. I'll do the Thomas Peters thing real quick. 2 wins in his last 5 starts worldwide. He won in Portugal. He just won a couple of weeks ago on the DP World Tour. That was the event in Abu Dhabi. And then, of course, he finished runner-up here in 2017. I think he's only played it 2017 and 2018. So he had a runner-up finish one of those years. So he's someone that I think is certainly interesting in the $7,000 range. Let's move on. Let's go to the 6s. Whew, I almost went back to the 9s. I'm so excited. The $6,000 range. KH Lee, Martin Laird, Troy Merritt, Joel Damon, some names near the top and some names near the bottom at a flat 6,000. Honor Bon Lahiri. That's not fair. Oh my gosh. Hank Lee Biota has done it. Wow, the fall of Hank. Kevin Tway, Lee Hodges, Roger Sloan, Nick Watney, Chesson Hadley. Oh boy. All right, Greg, $6,000 range. Find us some value, because we might not be able to pass up that $10,000 range.
Yes. So one, you mentioned him, KH Lee. I think coming back here last week was a solid performance. He's been showing very consistent play. He hasn't quite popped the way we hope, but it's been very consistent. And you look at what he's done at the Genesis in the past. He was 66th last year, which means nothing more than he made the cut. Tied 13th the year before that, tied 25th the year before that. So I think there's another chance to go with TPC Lee. I think he could be a very interesting option. And then at 6,500, another player I'm very interested in is Patrick Rogers. Rick, we every time we talk about him, we talk about driver putter. And I think that's a big advantage. But you look at his history here, and it speaks to the importance of that. The distance benefits him, and then he's very good on the greens, and he's a California guy. He went to Stanford, right? So tied 12th last year when he played, tied 30th, tied 15th, tied 26th, tied 22nd, and he missed the cut in his first go around here. So I think there's a real avenue to get a guy like Patrick Rodgers in there, and it checks, even though he missed his last 2 cuts, it kind of checks a lot of boxes for a guy at 6,500.
Yeah, 5 straight top 30s at this event for Patrick Rodgers. Couple of top 25s in there. T12 his best finish last year, as Greg was mentioning. Okay, Sia, what do we have here in terms of value out of this $6,000 range?
I think there's a lot of value here. And again, with a shorter field, there's a lot of talent up top. But I think with a shorter field, I think you can count on some of these 6K guys making the cut and potentially having a decent finishing position. And don't forget, because this isn't going to be much of a birdie fest, finishing position probably will end up mattering a little bit more just from a ratio standpoint. So you do want guys that are, hopefully going to finish in the top 20. A few names come to mind. Matt Kuchar is one of them. While I don't really like Matt Kuchar, and I addressed this a couple weeks ago in like a birdie fest, I do like him in a place where you just have to navigate and be smart on the course and just plod along. And he's shown a tendency to do that with his finishing positions. Miscut last year, but 2nd, 28th, 26th, 22nd. The 4 prior to that. Now his form isn't very good off the tee, on approach. It's been bad, but if you are going to find your form and potentially make a cut, it probably would be here. So I do like Matt Kuchar. Brandon Grace is a guy I was on last week. I kind of like him again this week. Also pretty good history here. JT Poston, speaking of good history, but also like pretty good form. I know JT Poston was really popular last week. I think he's a solid play. And I'll mention 2 other guys that are low end, but really good ball strikers, particularly on approach. Doug Gehman, who, by the way, has been making cuts at an alarming rate.
Made like 8 in a row or something.
Yes, I think it's 7 out of 8, 7. I think.
Yeah, that's probably right.
And he not only has he been making cuts, but the metrics are there. He can really fall apart with the short game, particularly with the putter, but it hasn't been bad over the last 24 rounds. So I think his game might be sort of ascending, that type of ascent we're looking for to catch a guy relatively early. The other guy, this is the guy who made 7 out of the last 8 cuts, not Doug Gehman. It's Aaron Rai. 31st here in 2020. He's made 7 out of 8 cuts, like I said. And I think he's another guy that's really low priced that has plenty of upside.
Yeah, you mentioned the need for a 6 of 6, and I think that is accurate when, more than half the field is going to make the cut. And normally I would not love just the guy who makes the cut, but if you don't have a 6 of 6 this week, Sia, it's going to be tough, right? I mean, assuming we don't get a couple of chalk bombs that the 3 most popular golfers on the slate miss the cut, you're going to need to have some quality 6 of 6s if you want to make a run at something.
Yeah, and there's still you can probably have a 5 out of 6 and get there if you have 3 of your guys are somewhere middling around the top 10 or top 5. So it's not like it's impossible to cash in that respect. But yeah, you're definitely going to want a 6 for 6 here. And honestly, when you look at the 7K range, especially let's say 7,700 or 7,600 and below, I don't think there's a huge difference in that pool of golfers versus the upper 6K range. I understand there is a difference, but I don't think it's a huge difference. When you're talking about Matt Kuchar, Brandon Grace, some of these guys who have been playing well, like Poston, Gim, I think they can, there's guys I like in the 7K range, but I think they can grade out just fine against even the Corey Connors of the world, Sahith Theegala, Siwoo Kim. I don't think there's a huge difference there.
What happened to Mito? So Mito is 6,600. Greg, he was the elite ball striker last year. Then this year, this season happened. He's lost strokes off the tee in basically 3 of 5, and the 2 that he's gained have been 0.02 and 0.03. He's now a putting phenom. Should I be concerned when a golfer is this far away from his DNA?
I'd give him a little bit of time. I think you're looking at 2 things: a young player who doesn't have a lot of experience, so we don't really know what kind of courses fit his game well. I guess we have an idea, but we don't really know that yet. And he also took off a ton of time, and you don't know what he was doing in that time between the RSM and the Farmers. That's a lot of time for a young PGA Tour rookie to not play. So I thought that was kind of a curious decision. I'm not sure what went into that. But no, I give him a little bit of time. It could be a good sign that the putting's coming up. But I got another guy in the 6K range I want to ask you about, who I'm quite interested in. And it's similar to the Patrick Rogers line of thinking here. But I'm not sure it's safe enough if you're looking based on the 6K 6 of 6 conversation. It's Wyndham Clark.
I knew it was Wyndham Clark. I literally started typing in his name. I knew you were going to say Wyndham Clark.
Yeah, look at his results. He's played here twice. Tied 8th, tied 17th. He drives it great. He gains like crazy off the tee, and I guess he hasn't really been lately, but he typically does. That's where he gets hot when he plays well. He's driving it great, and he tends to putt really well. And I'm seeing a good finish at the American Express, okay at the RSM. MDF, I just wish that didn't exist anymore entirely. I know it basically doesn't, but MDF at Pebble and miscut it at Waste Management. Is this too risky, or can I go horses for courses here and play Wyndham Clark?
I think you're fine here. I think there's a lot of risk inherently for everybody in that $6,000 range, and I think you could do a lot worse than Wyndham Clark. Right? The MDF, whatever. Okay, he gained strokes on the field that week and didn't get to play on Sunday. I don't care. The miscut at Phoenix, no problem there. But before that, he'd rattled off a bunch of made cuts. He's a very good putter. The good results here, you could do a lot worse. You could do a lot worse than Wyndham Clark.
All right, I like it. Maybe first round leader Wyndham Clark.
There you go.
Ooh.
Now we're cooking with gas.
Hey, can I ask you guys about somebody? I'm just very curious about your opinion on him. He's 7,500. It's Seamus Power, who's played here once before. It was in 2019. I feel like he's going to be forgotten a little bit for a couple reasons. He's coming off a miscut, but more importantly, there's a few guys around him that I think are going to be pretty popular, like Paul Casey, Tom Hoagie. Any thoughts on him? Is that somebody you guys want to roster this week?
If you're a believer in Seamus for the next 12 months, this is like the greatest spot to roll him out, right? Which is everybody's forgotten about him, but he has been on an absolute tear dating back to last summer. He has a very public blow up, not a blow up, but he coughs up a 5-shot lead at Pebble Beach and finishes T9. Still a great result. And he misses a cut at Phoenix by a shot. Like, I don't care. Now he gets to go to a ball strikers course, and he's a very good putter. Like, if you believe Seamus Power long-term, this is the best spot for him.
Most mispriced player in the field in the run-in for that?
What's his price?
7,500. I feel like, 2 weeks removed from that collapse, and especially in this loaded field, like there's no pressure on him anymore. Nobody's looking at Seamus Power anymore. They're looking at like the 20 guys.
Yeah, we're done with him, right? Everybody's done with him.
Right.
Yeah, it's like when we all just forgot about Corey Connors after he rattled off his 8th consecutive top 20. We were like, boring.
Yeah. He's a great play. I was trying to keep him secret.
Seamus.
So thanks for bringing him up. See,
sorry about that.
All right, gents. Anything else before we get out of here? Riviera? Anything?
You can almost, fun fact, you can almost come up with an all Cam or an all Matt lineup. Cam Smith, Cam Tringale, Cam Davis, Cam Young, Cam Champ. We're missing one, so we got to throw somebody else in there. And the Matt lineup: Matt Fitzpatrick, Matt Jones, Matt Kuchar, Matt Naismith, Matt Wallace. Just saying.
If one of those turns out to be optimal, that would be amazing.
I think the Matt one has legs if you throw in like Patrick Cantlay or Rahm or somebody like that, or Roar Vieira.
Man, Andrew Putt Cam. I was just looking for guys that had AM in their name. Abraham Answer. No,
Ooh, that's not bad.
That's not bad. Not bad. I like that. All right, gentlemen. I think that'll do it. Big thanks to producer Jacob doing all the hard work behind the scenes. We'll be back on Tuesday for the mega preview pod for this week's Genesis Invitational. And of course, round by round recaps after the conclusion of each said round. Follow Sia Nejad on Twitter at Sia Nejad. Follow Greg DuCharme at The Real GFD. And you can find me at RickRunGood. This has been The First Cut, and we'll catch you next time.